Well, hi, and welcome to Trick or Treat. My name is Mike Maione. I am your host today, and I hope some people are watching because the schedule said 11 p.m. Oof, nobody's up at 11 p.m. At least not in my house. Well, welcome to Trick or Treat. As I said, my name is Mike Maione. I'm the host of this show, and we have a great show planned for you today. We have one person who's not only an author and a magician and a federal judge and a lecturer, he's also a great friend of mine and very knowledgeable. We're going to introduce you to him in a little while. His name is Gary Brown. But first things first.
Fact or fake news, fact or fake news, fact or fake news.
Yes, it's time for fact or fake news. And here is your fact or fake news question. Harry Houdini died after almost drowning during the water torture tank trick and died in the arms of his wife Bess right there on stage. Is that fact or is that fake news? We're not going to tell you right now. You're going to have to watch the whole show, wait until the very end, or you could Google it. We hope you'll watch the whole show and wait until the end. Now, before we introduce our guest, I do want to share something with you. Last week we talked about the importance of wearing a mask. And you may recall I had a picture of a young lady. Her name was Karen from Kentucky, who had a problem wearing the mask because it inhibited her ability to breathe. So she cut a hole in the mask. And of course, we told you that that's not the right way to wear a mask. And then we gave you some tips about, taking the mask off from the straps and not touching the face of the mask and making sure it covers your nose and all the way down to your chin, your whole mouth. And it struck me that you know it's important when you wear a mask to also look fashionable. I've collected some pictures of people wearing masks who look very, very fashionable. And let's take a look. Yeah, yeah. And now this young lady is also, she is obviously, she has forgotten to bring her mask. So she's improvised. And you can see it's very stylish. It does all of the things that are necessary, covers the nose, covers the mouth completely. And you have to admit, it's very colorful. Much nicer than those little light blue ones, don't you think? Oops. Let's go back. Let's look at some more. We have another one right here. Let's see. This man. Now this man, he is really environmentally savvy because this is really reusing what he has available to him. And you know what? This one also serves as an eye shield, which is far superior to just that mouth mask. So I give this guy props. Let's see what else we have. Oh, on the same vein, it looks like it's a soda bottle, and he's actually taking care not to scratch his face. He's put a little bit of gauze around there so it's nice and comfy. Yeah, very, very clever. Very clever. What do we have? Now, I'm not quite sure where this guy is. I mean, I think it probably works well on land, but it might also be good for scuba diving. I'm not really sure 100%, but it looks like he could go scuba diving with that thing as well. Very, very clever. Very clever. You know what? I think that this is really this man's fetish. I think that he is just, this is a fetish. Yeah, this is a fetish. He's just using COVID-19 as an excuse. That's what I think. Here's a clever man. Now, here's a clever man because he doesn't have to worry about straps making his ears fall down. No, he just peels the little plastic tabs off and it sticks right to his face. Is that now that's clever. You have to admit that is a clever man. I'm not so sure I would recommend this. There's a good chance of suffocation. There just is. Just is a good chance of suffocation. What about this? Now, see, this is very handy because you won't usually have your shoes with you. But if I tried this, I would be flat out dead. I'd pass out from the smell. It's just not a good thing for everyone. Not in my family, anyway. Let's see what else. Look at this man. Now this you can go as soon as he's done with this, right to the compost pile. That's really clever. That is a clever one, and gives new meaning to the word edibles. Yeah, this is a little salt on the chip, and you got your lunch there too. Uh, now, magicians are not to be outdone either. And as you can see here, we have our own stylish way to wear a mask. So that's a little word of a few words to keep you thinking about masks and to keep them in your mind because we do want our masks. And hey, we have some visitors today, so I want to say hello to TJ is here with us. Thank you for joining us, TJ, and Eric. Eric, thank you for joining us. We're happy to see you both. That's great that you came to join us. Um, so let's see. The show is Trick or Treat, so I'm going to do a little trick for you. The trick I'm going to do for you today, before we introduce our guest, is they ask us, "Hey, you're a magician. Can you make money as a magician?" And the truth of the matter is, you can make money as a magician. Watch carefully. What we do is we take this $1 bill, we just give it a little fold like this, and a fold like that, and another fold just like this, and one more fold just like that, and give it a little blow, and that's what makes the magic happen. And sure enough, we have made ourselves $10. And so that's my trick for you today. And now here comes my treat. My treat is to introduce you to a very, very talented man, my friend, Gary Brown. You're there, Gary. Can we hear you?
I'm here with you, Michael.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us today, Gary. It's so great to see you. You
Well,
look very
thank you
good.
for
I like
having
your
me.
set there. Very nice. Handsome pictures in the background. It looks very, very good.
Michael, I'm so excited to be here that I'm even wearing pants.
Oh, how I'm honored. I'm honored. That's wonderful. Is that unusual for you, Gary?
In
I
these
know you
days,
wear a robe most
in,
times, so you can get away
in these
without.
days, I also have a Joe Silky t-shirt on. Can you
Look
see
at
that?
that, the Jinx. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
that was
Joe.
designed
Joe
by
is
Joe Silky. Spoiler alert, it'll relate to something else we might talk about later.
very good, very good. Now, Gary, how are you? Now, I know that your regular job, your most main job, is as a judge. So,
Yeah.
are you judging from home?
I am. I'm actually holding court by audio and video conference right now. We're hoping to
Wow.
reopen soon with in-person stuff, but we're getting actually a lot done. The challenge is going to be jury trials. We got to figure out how to work with that many people safely and so forth. But it's a challenging time for everybody, but we're
Yeah,
working at it. So
yeah. Now, who's involved in that in figuring out the logistics in the courtroom?
a lot of committees because it's a federal courtroom, right? So we have
Uh-huh.
big committees, and they're consulting various experts on all different sorts of things. You know, what kind of protective gear we need, what kind of distances. The one advantage we have is courtrooms are very big, so you have a lot of space, so you
Yeah,
can work with that to start with. So,
that's true.
in fact, they're designed that way because of disease issues, right? So, you know how the British judges wear the wigs, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That was because often in those days had head lice. So the judges would shave their head,
Uh-huh.
and if the lice got on the wig, they would just shake it out, stomp on them, and go home. So
Interesting.
yeah,
So there we
so,
go. We have
so
a little bonus information today.
it's just
You don't have to wear a wig now. That's good.
I might have to. We'll see.
You might have to that and a face mask.
Exactly.
Well, you sent us some pictures. I just want to take a little stroll down memory lane with you, if you don't mind. Let's see if
Sure.
we can bring up a couple of. Now,
Oh
that is not you that I see in the foreground there, Gary.
no, I'm in the background. This is a picture that surfaced recently of my first professional performance. In the foreground is my cousin Linda, who was I
Uh huh.
think 7, and I was 11 or 12.
Uh huh.
And my aunt hired me to perform as the magician for her birthday party.
Very
And you could see my Mattel magic set, right? I had a basic sort of magic kit lineup. I did the Chinese sticks and the card box and the coin box and all those things. But I remember my aunt paid me $5 for the show, so it was professional.
Oh yeah.
Um, and the big hit of the show, believe it or not, was the Adams smoking dog. Do you know what that was, Michael?
I don't. What was the
Uh,
Adams? I didn't get into it until I was well into my adult life. So I
okay,
didn't have the pleasure of that particular kit or that Trek. How did that
yeah.
go?
So this was clearly a holdover from the 40s or the 50s. It was a little tiny plastic dog that came with these paper cigarettes, and the paper cigarettes were loaded with some kind of, I think, just grains of gunpowder, so that when you lit it, it would blow smoke rings. So a little tiny plastic dog, about this big, you put this piece of paper, you lit it, and it would blow smoke rings, encouraging, of course, me and the little girls to smoke. And the grand irony was it was the hit of the show, meaning I had to do an encore because we were killing time. My aunt's like, take the dog back out. And I put the dog in for another cigarette, and all you had to do was light the match. And yeah, that was life in the 70s for
Yeah.
those who didn't experience it.
I do remember talking about cigarettes and promoting smoking back when. Do you remember candy cigarettes?
Of course,
Did you
of
have
course.
candy cigarettes as a kid?
Those
Yeah.
those were huge at the time,
Yeah.
right? So
Weren't
that
they?
and that
Big thing.
and the smoking dog. So
The
there you are.
smoking dog. Good to keep in mind.
Isn't that
All
great?
right. Now this is, I got to tell you that when I saw that jacket, I said, "Wow, I got to get me one of
Yeah.
them."
So,
What is that about, Gary?
so this was my first sort of adult promo photo,
Uh-huh.
and that's a 1930s smoking jacket
Uh-huh.
that I bought in a store in Washington many years ago, and that's a Thurston throwing card that is not really balanced on top of my finger, but rather is taped to a wire, and the wire is taped to the back of my finger,
It's a
and I'm
trick.
and I was in the Green Acres Mall having my portrait done, doing that for the longest time. And then I put my hand down and it would stick to it. People say, "Oh, that's how he did it."
um, so the Thurston's throwing card, is that an original Thurston's throwing card, or was it
That
just a
is
Oh, wow.
that's
And how did
the
you
one.
come by that?
There, fortunately, Thurston didn't use up a lot of his throwing cards, so someone found them in the Heaney barn, which was a big
Oh.
find for collectors down south, such that you could buy those, and you still could buy them for about $5 or $10.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's a pretty cool little trinket to have. Yeah.
It is, and it'd be
Yeah.
nice for certain card tricks and so forth. So yeah.
Yes. Excellent. So this is now for those of you who don't know, Gary Brown wrote a book about Al Flosso, and Al Flosso, if you're not familiar with him, and he is um, like a super magician from when? From the 50s, I guess. Was that his time, his heyday?
Well, he actually went back to the 20s, right? He started as
Oh,
a
wow.
sideshow and carnival type magician. He was a Coney Island. The Coney Island Faker was from Dreamland. Traveled the country. He had a very interesting life, and he ended up as a magic dealer, right? So he ran Flosso's magic shop from the 1940s forward. And would you like to tell? Shall I tell you how I got into his story?
Oh, please do, because I don't know that you did any other biographies. Have you?
No, I'm not. I'm an accidental biographer. I didn't mean to become a biographer. It just happened to
Well, tell
me.
us, tell us how.
So I was in law school, and then I got out of law school. I was writing some articles about magic history, and a few of them got picked up by American Heritage and some magic publications. I then got to meet Jackie Flosso, Flosso's son, who was running the shop in New York City. And I said to him one day, I said, I looked your dad up, and he would have been 100 in a couple of months. So for his 100th birthday, why don't we write an article about his life? So Jackie pulled out some materials. We got a few illustrations and told me some basic facts. And I wrote a short little piece that appeared in MUM, the Society of American Magicians magazine. And it was nice. It was a really nice little article. And then a strange thing happened. I got contacted by magicians from literally all over the world. People from Hong Kong, people in California, people down south, people in Las Vegas, saying, "Did you know this story? Or did you know that story?" And the letters I got included people like Shari Lewis. I got to know Ricky Jay. I got to know Teller. all these people, and each one had like a little piece of Flosso's story. And I saved all the communications. Eventually, I had a file about this thick. And I looked at it one day and I said, I have to put this down to a book because no one's ever going to be able to recreate this. And so with those stories as sort of a backdrop, Jackie there to be able to fill in pieces. And I did some hard work. I mean, I went to Washington and I went to Houdini's library and I looked up. This was before before the internet was a viable way of researching. I went through the old issues of the Sphinx and the Genie and so forth, and got all his appearances, old Billboard magazines. And I put together this book, and L&L agreed to publish it. They did a beautiful job. That picture there, you can see the photo on the left, and then they used that photo as the cover photo or another shot from the same set. That was Flosso's favorite publicity photo of himself. And they put out the book, and it gave me street cred.
Oh, I should think so.
Yeah, it really.
Now, there are a lot of people who may watch this video and aren't familiar with some of his work, and so I do want to show a little bit. He did a miser's dream, which is a coin pail routine for those who don't know, and I think everybody who's ever studied the coin pail has studied his routine, and I know that this is a short version of a longer routine that he does, which you can tell us a little bit about.
And that was what was interesting to me, right? This guy was sort of the hardcore magicians of old. I mean, these are the guys that just had to grind out these shows time and time again, and you can see. If we get a chance to see it, but if not, it's pretty easy to find now. That wasn't true when I was writing the book. I had to go to somebody who had the VHS tape and watch it. We eventually aired that VHS tape at Monday Night Magic when we did a promotion night for the book. And I got to watch sort of a modern day crowd, the 1990s crowd, watch this act that derived from the 1920s. And in the darkness, just watching them with the black and white flickering light, off the screen on their faces, and everyone's laughing, howling, and it's amazing how good the magic was. And hopefully, if you can't share it here, hopefully people can go find it.
No, I called you up here, Sonny. You got lots of money. Put your hand in this pocket. Got any money in there? Turn it inside out.
Oh.
Put your hand in this pocket. Got any money in there?
What can I say?
Turn it inside out. Put the
See, it's still not easy to see him perform.
Look at this pocket, Sonny. See if you got any $50 silver dollars. You know you're broke.
If I knew the dialogue well enough, I'd just do it in.
I'll make the boy for 2 minutes time, and after that I'll wake him up. Face putting him to sleep.
But, I mean,
Well, we'll give it one last little see if we can get this.
Okay.
Now the boy is sleeping.
Here you go.
Are you sleeping? That's what I thought. This is the part where we cut his head off and place it in a can here. Don't worry, my boy, you won't feel a thing. Open your mouth. $50 on back of his tonsil. Blow it in here. That's good. Take it out. Get away from me. Coin in a little can here with his right over here. Look at this. Up in the air, right in a little hole right there. 2 of them. There they are. There's 1, 2, and stepping on one all the time. This one. Bottom of the little can, of course. That's a little harder. Look up in the air and no, let him come down. Now look at this one over there. Look at this one over here. Look at that one. Take it out, leave it there, blow the other one in there. He's all right, he's all right. How do you feel? No good, oh my. 3 minutes, he says. Look at this. Give me a hand here. Blow the other one in there. Oh, he's all right. Oh, no good. How do you feel? Just a minute, my boy. The gaffers. Look at this one. Open your mouth. 2 more. He's all right. Give me a hand. Hold it tight. The handkerchief right there. Put your hand in his pocket. Take out the $50. Have you got any? Tell the truth. No money. Look at this. That don't sound like buttons. Take it out of there. He's got lots of money in the can. Come on then. Just a minute, my boy. That's a little better. He said no money. Put your hand in there and take him out, sonny. Take him out.
The routine, but we're back.
Well, I was going to say, I'm glad you got the sound for that portion of it, right? Because you can see how important the sound was in that routine, right? In other words, if you're performing for a crowd of 300, 500 people, and it's loud, the sound is what did it, right? He hits the kid's pocket, and all of a sudden there's coins in there, right? The bucket, it keeps making that loud crashing sound. I just think that sort of, it's critical to the routine, and the routine is just, it's an absolute like masterwork of magic and dealing with spectators. I think I've told you, Mike, Fosso used to call a kid up from the audience, and sometimes you have to have the right spectator for that, right?
Sure.
And when he had a kid that was acting up or whatever, he had the best like blow off line ever. He said, "Gotta find myself a new boy," and he would just push the kid off the stage and grab some other kid. So it's sort of interesting. It's a very different magic than we practice today, right? It's a very different,
Uh-huh.
but some of the roots there are just remarkable, and his sleight of hand is
What
beyond. Yeah.
what amazes me is, pardon me, is how he was able to manhandle a child, which it's like, whoa, you
Yeah.
wouldn't dare these days. I mean,
Right. Right.
it's just amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
just like times change. I mean, you don't do
Yeah,
cigarette
you
tricks
couldn't do
anymore.
that today. You couldn't do that
You couldn't.
that way today.
Right.
But some of the basic principles are just fascinating, right? I mean, the way
Yeah.
he gets the kid up there, he manages to load the coins, and it looks like he produces 1,000 coins,
Right.
at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
it's kind of
Well, as I said, everybody I think who's done a coin pail routine has studied Al Flosso's coin pail routine. I know I did it when I was developing my routine as well.
right.
Yeah, he's just great. Um, let's go back to the pictures here. So we have this is
Sure.
Al Flosso's book. That's the book. Now you were also a lecturer, and I see. Look at this. There you are with a bunch of very talented, high-powered magicians on this poster, and there in the lower left-hand corner is my friend Gary Brown. Tell me what's going on here.
All right, so this was the 2018 IBM National Convention, and I was selected by their EDF, which is their Endowment Development Fund, to be their distinguished lecturer, because I'd written some material on the origins of the fourth dimension and how magicians and con artists were involved in creating what we know as the fourth dimension. It was all a con and a swindle. And I wrote this interesting article, and then they called me out to go lecture about it, which I did. And that's me lecturing in the top left-hand corner. It was a great experience. I got to be on the bill with people like Jeff McBride, who's one of my magical heroes. And Lance Burton was there, and just amazing people. I did not know I was going to be on this poster, which sort of leads me to an interesting anecdote. If you want to go to the next photo, I can tell the
Oh
story.
yeah,
I didn't know I was on,
that's the amazing Jonathan you're
that's
sitting
the amazing Jonathan, who was also on the bill. I had no idea I was going to be on this poster. I went out to dinner with a friend, and I came back, and the guy was running. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You're on the poster. You're supposed to be on this line, and there's this line of everybody at the convention waiting for autographs." So I get in at the end, which I'm next to the amazing Jonathan, who I have never met before. I've seen since, but and he
Had you ever
is.
seen him perform before?
I had not. I mean,
So
I like
you
just little TV,
okay?
snippets or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But they sit me next to him, and he is everything his reputation warrants. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
within seconds, I'm sitting next to the guy. "Who are you?" "I'm Gary Brown." "What are you doing here?" "I'm a magic historian." So he takes out a Sharpie, and on the tablecloth writes, "This is Gary Brown. Get his autograph here." And he writes like an arrow to me. And then he like says, "Oh, my sinuses are killing me," and he goes like this, and water comes pouring out of his nose. It's all over the table. I mean, he's berserk, right? I mean, everybody. He's putting his thumb through his ear. He's doing that old gag. He has something for everybody. And now I'm with him a few minutes, and all of a sudden we're approached by a delegation from the Indian government. Michael, I am not making up this story. 3 guys in very traditional Indian garb approach us, and they say, "Gentlemen, we are here from the Indian government, and we would like to invite you to Asia's largest magic convention. We would like you as part of our talent there." And it was just overwhelming, And the guy takes out a little brochure and he opens it up, and he says it's going to be in this beautiful province in India, and he's going on about it. And he flips over the brochure, and on the back is a picture of a group of magicians. Some of them you recognize. I remember Shimada was in the
Yeah,
picture,
sure.
a few others. And he said, and then Jonathan interrupts them by saying, "You will never, ever get me in that picture." It was a devastating moment. I mean, the 3 guys put their heads down, and they say, we're sorry, we've offended you, and we'll leave now. And they start backing away from the table. And he's like, no, guys, it's a joke. You see, you've already taken the picture, so you can't get me in it now. And they say, no, we've offended you. We have failed. We will not bother you again. And they start to chill off. And he grabs me. Now, I've known the Amazing Jonathan for 8 minutes, and he grabs me. He's like, tell them, Gary, tell them I'm crazy. So I'm like, guys, look, really, he's crazy. It's a joke. He's crazy. Just come back. And they're walking out and they say, no, we failed. We will not bother you again. And they leave. And he's screaming at this point, I'll go to India. I'll go, And I look at him, I say, Jonathan, I'm a judge. I'm trying to keep a low profile here. You had to create an international incident over a joke, right? And it's not even a good joke. You took the picture. I would just stop. But that was my introduction to the Amazing Jonathan. And fortunately, we did see those guys later in the convention, so they didn't kill themselves or do something horrible. I was really scared that they would, because it was really something.
Have you gotten a chance to see his stage show since?
I have seen him lecture. I've seen him perform, and he is he's one of a kind.
Yeah, he is one of a kind.
What's interesting about him, and I find this interesting about a lot of performers, like sometimes you see somebody like one of my favorites, Harrison Greenbaum, right?
Yeah, hysterical.
It's so funny. You right? You said right, hysterical. But if you step back and watch their magic, they're very good. They're very strong magicians with very original magic. The same is true of Amazing Jonathan, right? I mean, his stuff is different. He does things that nobody else does. He lectured. I learned things from him that but he plays himself off like a goofball, but he's actually very, very talented magician.
Yeah, so. Very skilled.
Yeah.
Now, this looks like it's at the what is it? The Phantasma Magic?
Phantasma, right? So I also repeated my fourth dimension lecture there, and what was great about that was I brought my spirit trumpet, which we'll talk about. But they have all these original Houdini artifacts, including an original Houdini spirit trumpet there. So I was lecturing for the parents.
Did they? They had
in the city. I
tell
you, it was like one of those things you're lecturing, but you're almost like you're so overwhelmed by the surroundings. It's hard to, why would you care about me when Houdini stuff is right behind me? But it worked out pretty well.
Phantasma has quite a nice collection of artifacts, magic artifacts, and it's right here in New York City. So if people wanted to go to that magic shop, they could see.
Right. I mean, people should know the guy who owns Phantasma, Roger, is a very passionate collector, and he collects all kinds of stuff, and he has most of it on display there. Yeah. So it's really worth the trip.
Yeah, it is. It is worth the trip. Now, you're an inventor, and we just talked a bit about your spirit trumpet, which you'll tell us more about in a minute. I'm sure people don't even know what that is. But this is a piece. Why don't you just tell me about it? I can tell it's this television show of some sort from Asia. That's about all I can tell.
In this gentleman's hand is a device that I invented. I mean, I reinvented. It's an old magic trick. We had at our magic club, the Slight Club, we had a dollar store challenge, meaning walk into the dollar store, buy something for $1 and build it into a trick. So I'm walking around the aisles and I spot this cup and I look at it, and based on its size and its shape and some other features it had, I realized it would make a great loader bowl. For those unfamiliar, loader bowl is a very old magic trick, which involves a jar or a cup or a vase or something that pours water. You empty it and then you put it down for a second and you can pour it again, and it refills itself a number of times. And I realized that for $1, with then a little bit of work, I could build this thing that we ultimately called the Lotta mug. It was a travel mug, right? So it was plastic, it was lightweight, it was inexpensive. Ronjo's started selling it. And because it was so good, it was really it's a great prop for traveling performers, particularly. Such that Lee Asher and Nathan Kranzo were two very well-known magicians. They were hired to train the magicians for China's Got Talent, which is the equivalent of America's Got Talent, but there's a billion people watching. And they bought a dozen to train the magicians in one concept, which is the Loda mug, or the loader bowl concept. Well, this one magician, I don't remember his name, I'm embarrassed to say, but he liked it so much, he used it on the show. He actually used it as his performance piece. So something I thought up on the Dollar Store Challenge night wound up on China's Got Talent, and a billion people apparently
Fantastic.
liked it well enough.
Yeah.
He blew the judges away with it. He was walking up to them and he kept pouring the water out, and it was just beautiful. So that was kind of an exciting moment.
Oh, that must have been. That must have
Yeah.
been. Now, your other prop that you've made is a spirit trumpet. Why don't you describe what a spirit trumpet is for people who
Yeah.
may not know?
So I actually have it with me, and I'll tell you how this came to be. So this is a spirit trumpet, right? It was just simply a metallic trumpet, right? Which complete ungapped, nothing to it. And the spirit mediums used to use this in seances in the dark for a couple of things, right? They could put it on their head and toss it so it would bounce, it would fly around. They would get a dark stick, and in the dark room, that's why there was this glowing band on the end. They could make it float, right? So everyone saw the glowing band go up in the air, even though they got a stick on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they could make it talk like this in the dark, but it had to be completely dark. And I thought one day, could I build something that would be like a spirit trumpet that would talk in the light? And I am not the best craftsman, but I banged something together. It wasn't this. But I put something together using some old technology and some new technology, and it worked. And it was pretty amazing. I brought it to Ray Goulet, had this NEMCA, this New England Magic Collectors Association convention up back in 2016, I think it was. And I'm showing it off in the hall, right? I'm showing it to some of my friends. Dean Carnegie was there, the Magic Detective, a few others, and I'm showing it off. And it actually was pretty impressive, the one that I built. It wasn't as nice as this. I'll explain that in a second. But all of a sudden, I'm showing this thing, and it's making Eusapia Palladino, the medium, come back, and you can hear her voice. And a guy pulls me aside, an older man. You kid, come here. Now, I'm a 50-year-old federal judge. Nobody calls me kid, right? Hey, come here. And he says, do you know who I am? And I say, no, sir, I don't. I'm Dave Cressy. I'm king of mouth coils. Now, I didn't know, Mike, that mouth coils had royalty particularly, but
No, I was unaware myself.
yeah. And then he looks at me and says, what the hell are you doing showing that thing? I said, I'm just showing some of my friends. What's wrong with you? That thing's worth money. I've retired a couple of years now. I'll come out of retirement to build it. So stop showing that thing, kid. Put it away. Which, made me think, like, maybe it's like worth something. So on the way home from the convention, I called George Robinson at Viking. And, first he was like, oh, let me see, send me a video or whatever. And I sent him a video, and he sent me an email back saying, sold. We'll figure this out. And he spent the next year in serious, heavy research and development. He invested a lot of money, and he produced this. And this is the Viking Spirit Trumpet. It is a beautiful, expensive stage prop. George made it not only beautiful, but he added some technology that I did not know exists. Such that this is one of those things when you use it, and it comes with this gorgeous stand. It looks like a museum piece. You just keep it like that on stage, and it talks. And it's just to see my vision come to something like this was just really so worthwhile. And it's amazing. So
It is quite an accomplishment, and there's nobody a better craftsman than Viking.
right.
They just do some fantastic props.
You're absolutely right about that, Mike. The thing I'll add to that is not only is the craftsmanship gorgeous, right? They'll take an old prop and make it just perfect with, everything fits exactly and whatever. But what I didn't know about George is he's an engineer, and he knows a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows a lot of things. And again, they added a technology to this thing that literally makes it impossible. I mean, if you looked at the one I built, which I think you might have seen my
Actually, haven't seen this one up close. So
yeah,
at one of the next future club meetings, I hope you'll drag it to the meeting.
Yeah, I'll bring it down. But mine you could figure out if you looked at it long enough. And mine also had some pitfalls that this one eliminates, and it kills. So anyway.
Fantastic. Now you're a performer as well. You're not just an inventor and an author. And a judge, you are a performer. And
Yes.
there's one picture I know right off, and that's because I took it.
Yeah.
It's from the Parlor of Mystery.
Right? And Mike, I'm going to say something now, and I'm not saying this because it's you or it's the show, but I always get up and say this, this whenever I perform there. It's an amazing venue. I mean, you've put together something, you
Well,
and the
thank
other
you.
folks are behind. I mean, that you can go to a club on Long Island and see live magic is just something that people should appreciate. And I hope we get to open it soon again.
Yeah, me
We're
too.
back to that. So that's before I Paul
Well,
Mystery. The other
just let me
picture.
say one thing. It's not just me. It's TJ Tanner, it's Joe Silky, it's Ted Plesia, and Terry Perrette. And it's the five of us who put this together. And we have the association of Jeff Miller now, who's really, when it comes to singing our praises, Jeff is there all the time. So
Right.
thank you, Gary. Thank you for the little
But I
plug.
mean, it compares with venues that are in major cities, right? You can go to Monday Night Magic in the city. There's one in Chicago, there's one in Philadelphia, and there's one right here on Long Island. And I think people should know that
Thank you.
and
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
So,
good. Now the
the
other
other picture,
picture,
yeah,
that's
real
Jeff
quick.
McBride. I recognize him. What's going on there?
So I lectured at Mystery School, and I was teaching something that I uncovered during my fourth dimension research called the Mystic Candle. And it's a trick, and very, very old trick, so old that people don't use it anymore, where you can eat a lit candle. And I was going to make it, so it was sort of the cornerstone of the lecture that I was going to do at Mystery School, which was being held at a casino in outside of Las Vegas. And shortly before, they loved the proposal, and they said, yeah, come do that. And then they send the rules for the performance, and it says no fire. Not even a match, nothing. And I'm like, guys, I'm teaching the eating a lit candle thing. Like, are you kidding? Like, what am I going to do now? And Jeff McBride, who, in my view, one of the strongest magicians ever. He's one of my magical heroes. And he said, that's okay. I have this other venue I perform at, the Wonderground. I'll be performing the night before. You'll come on stage with me. I'll do the trick with you. We'll perform together. And then the next day, when you do your lecture, you can say, as you guys all saw last night, right? So now, because of this silly rule that I can't light a little candle, I can't light a match, I get to perform on stage with Jeff McBride. So that's a great moment. And the reason we have the photo is not because I planned to have someone take a picture. In fact, I neglected to. And I realized it's a bucket list item. I performed with Jeff McBride and I don't have a picture. So I put together a contest at Mystery School. I said, if anybody can find a picture, I have a whole package of magic. I have wands and all kinds of stuff I built and whatever that I award. And one of the guys there, Steve Sabo, who's a doctor and a very, very good magician, his wife happened to snap that picture. So that's the only reason I have a picture of it. I gave him the prize.
Talking about wands, this is you with a wand. And what makes this special?
Well, this will be my About the Author photo for the book that's coming out in October. And I've produced a book, written a book. I have a very famous photographer who's working on the cover right now. Oh, that's
who could that
Mike.
Be?
And Larry Haas is producing as part of his Magic and Theory of Art press, which in my view, puts out some of the best books right now. The book is a history. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Less of a history of magic wands, really a history of wand theory, right? So it's how to make a wand, how to use a wand, tips on using wands. I only recently, after being in this art for 40 years, discovered how many things you can do with a wand. And while I'm not going to perform something right now, I'm going to show you something. I mean, I brought one wand with me, which is one of the many wands I built. I'm going to teach you how to build this wand and others. And you'll notice this one's white. And Chung-Ling Soo, who was William Robinson, wrote a piece in a 1920s magic magazine, said always use a white wand if, like most of us, you wear dark clothing because it'll show up. And you can see that here, right?
Yeah, that makes good sense.
And the book is going to contain about a half dozen different kinds of wands you can build, some of them quite easy, some of them a little bit more involved. It's going to have about a half dozen effects you can use the wands for, as well as some other general sort of tips in history and so forth. So I'm very excited about that. And it looks like despite the pandemic, we're on track and it should come out in October.
Yeah, in October. Okay, I better get cracking at that picture then, huh?
We're waiting, Mike. We're waiting.
All right. Now, we've been talking about your magic career, but this is an important part of your life. And I think that people may recognize a few characters in this picture.
Yes. People tend to recognize me as well as Senator Chuck Grassley, because this is Senate chamber. And there's an interesting magic tie-in. So this is my confirmation hearing to become a federal judge. So to be confirmed as a district judge, you have to get appointed by a president. And I was actually appointed by two, right? I was appointed by Obama first, and then the Senate didn't get around to processing that. And President Trump reappointed me, and I finally got confirmed as a result of the hearing in that picture. The great thing about that, though, is to go through this process, and it's an extensive process. They literally look up everything you've ever written, everything you've ever published. So you could imagine my submission was, legal writings here,
Right.
and magic writings, like, books, and all this stuff had to go to the Senate. And that was, I got made fun of a lot and whatever. The day you're going for the hearing, you can get asked anything, right? And
Sure.
I mean, you can lose the job that day. You could not get the job. Yeah. And so they swear me in, right? And the lights are on, and it's on CNN, and you could look this up. It's actually still on the web. And Senator Grassley, right, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, looks at me and he says, so, Mr. Brown, I have a question for you. Actually, I was Judge Brown at that time because I was a magistrate judge. I have a question for you. You're into magic. Now, of all the things I'm ready for, I am not ready for this. And I'm just, my mind is racing. I say, yes, sir. And he said, good, because I have you under oath, and I think it's time we got some secrets out of you. Now, this is I'm going to give you just a snapshot of what goes on in my brain at this moment. My brain goes through this thought process. I do have a deck of cards in my briefcase. I don't think I'm supposed to take it out now. And I actually went through that, like those neurons fired all in one shot. And because, he's a very deliberate gentleman, he's a very bright man. Senator Grassley pauses for a moment. He said, of course, I'm kidding. Let's move on. And it was just this giant,
what a relief.
I was like ready to grab the cards. I mean, if that's what he wants, that's what I'll do.
That's what he wants. Yeah.
So magic even came up for me on the floor of the United States Senate.
That's fantastic. Now, I know that you do a little bit of magic in the courtroom. At least that's what you mentioned to me once before. So how do you incorporate your magic in the courtroom?
Yes, that was always a struggle, right? As a lawyer, you can never do tricks because you don't want to be fooling the jury, right? But as a judge, I have a little more latitude. So there's two things I do. One is a paddle trick. I have a black and white gavel, right? And I tell the jury how they have to listen to both sides of an argument. It's a standard instruction. And if I'm feeling the right mood and it's the right kind of case, I take out the gavel and I say, look, I've got this black gavel, and I do a paddle move, and then I show them, now it's a white gavel. But you see, it's a trick. And I expose the trick. I say, look, it's black on one side and white on the other, which shows you if you don't see both sides of something, you don't know the whole truth. So just wait for everything before you make up your mind. And that's a nice little thing. But the thing that really clinched it for me, my favorite part of my job is I get to swear in new citizens. And I use the old, I wish I had it here. Unfortunately, it's at the court right now. I haven't been there in a while. But the old silk wonder box, Mike, you might know it.
Yeah, sure. I'm aware of it.
And I have it stuffed with an American flag silk. And when I swear in a group of new citizens, there's usually somewhere between 75 and 200 people in the room. After I swear them in, I walk around the room and I say, I'm going to use this box to read your minds. And I show them the box is empty, and I go and I take little thoughts from them and I put them in the box. And then I do a little thing, and then I pull out the flag, and they just go crazy. And what's interesting is I was telling Larry Haas about that, and he said to me, well, you've hit on something there, because magic has always had a big role in ritual, right? Going back 2,000 years, right? And it's the perfect trick in the perfect venue. And now, because I do one of those ceremonies a couple of times a month, maybe once a month, depending on the month. I perform that trick for thousands of people at this point, and it always plays. It's just the greatest. So,
That's great. Now, look, my show is Trick or Treat. So,
yes.
Do you have a trick or a treat to share with us?
Well, because we're magicians, we all cheat, right? So I watched Terry's performance. He said he's going to do both, and I'm going to do both too.
Okay. All right.
That will turn into a treat. So
the stage is yours.
Yeah. So thank you. So this is I'm going to tell you a story about how I was a Boy Scout, Cub Scout, and I got 2 merit badges the same day, right? I got my merit badge for exploring and for running, and I'll show you how that came about. So exploring, they dropped me in the woods, and they said you have to find your way back to the Boy Scout camp. So I had my compass. They said, just head north. And so that's what I did. And every few steps, I would check my compass, and I was heading north. And I just kept going north, and I knew what I was doing. But you know, in the woods, it's hot. And I took a break, and I grabbed a drink for a moment, and then all of a sudden I must have lost my bearings because I was going south, and then I was going north again, and I was going south. I got all turned around, Michael. It was terrible. And then eventually there were bugs, and I was swatting the bugs, and then I was going east and west and north and south, and I got completely lost. And then I tripped over something in the woods, and it was a sign, and it said that the scout camp was only 100 yards that way. So I knew I just needed to walk 100 yards, and the exploring badge was mine. But then I heard sound. It was big. It was behind me. It was scary. And it was a bear. And that's how I got my badge for running. Yeah.
That
This is,
is a great trick.
thank
Why
you.
don't you tell us a little bit about it? And I think it's coming up in the treat here is that people are going to be able to get that.
Correct, right. So Vanish Magazine is coming out very soon, I believe, with
Yeah.
this. And they're going to have the templates. Now, I have to say, as I said before, our friend, Joe Silkey, who's an artist and a magician, did all the work on the template. Mike, you helped me design the presentation. I did a second presentation about the Bermuda Triangle. You came up with the scouting idea, which is very funny.
I wanted you to wear the neckerchief, though.
I know. I wish I had one. I do have some badges I could put on. But you know, it's interesting, Mike. Right now, we're all interested in magic that works in this little frame, right? This square. And it's hard because most of the time you drop cards on the table or coins in a bucket. Things get out of frame. This you can hold in the frame the whole time. And you can print this off your computer for a few pennies. It's based on a very old trick often called the Chinese compass, though it's been called different things. And it's been ripped off by every magician alive in some different variant. But this is one of the few that actually looks like a real compass, and I think it makes the trick more interesting.
I think.
And Mike, I think you said you might make the template available here as well.
What we're going to do is in the comments we'll put a link so that people who want to download it and print it out for themselves. I think Joe set it up so that it can be printed with a single sheet, 8.5, 11, both sides, so you can print it right at home.
Right, and it's very easy to do. There's an article coming out on Vanish with some demo videos and so forth. So that's my trick and my treat, which is it's a gift for everybody watching.
Well, thank you very much, Gary, and thank you for spending time with us on Trick or Treat. Thank you so much. Stick around. I want to follow up with you after the show. We're going to move on now because I knew that it would be impossible to interview you in the time frame that I had planned. It's just your life is just too complex. But it's time to say goodbye. And before we go, of course, we have to answer the
Fact or fake news, fact or fake news, fact or fake news.
So, did Harry Houdini die after almost drowning during the water torture tank trip and die in the arms of his wife Bess on stage?
That's fake news, totally fake news, nothing but fake news.
Yes, that was fake news. Harry Houdini did not die there. Harry Houdini died from a burst appendix, and he died. Now, a lot of people think that he died from a punch that he received from a college, but that is a legend. He didn't really die from, most medical people today will say that's highly unlikely that his appendix burst from a punch. But he did die from a burst appendix in a hospital bed. So not on stage, not with his wife. So if that's what you thought, if you thought he died that way, you are all wet and have watched the Tony Curtis Houdini movie, which is how he died in that movie. So that is the end of our show. Thank you so much for watching. Please come again next week. Hopefully we will say that the show is at 11 a.m., not at 11 p.m. on our announcement, and we'll have some we'll have some more fun for you. I want to say bye to Martin Cox. Thanks for tuning in, Martin. Robert, thank you very much for joining us today. And we hope to see you all again next week. All right, let's go.